2024, how we can think big in this moment. Just to let you know, the chat is open, so everybody should introduce yourself in the chat. We want to know who all is here. Shout out. We're gonna leave it open just so we can introduce ourselves and get a sense of everyone that's here, and then we're going to close the chat and we'll proceed with things. But while you introduce yourselves and everybody kind of comes in and gets to know who's in the building, I'm going to introduce my colleague and comrade, Levin Kim, who's also here, the chair of Higher Ed Labor United, a UAW leader. Levin, what's going on?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Chandra. I wanted to kick us off with a quick introduction of who I am, and then also excited to kick off the conversation with everyone today. It's really great to see everyone joining from all of these different campuses across the country. Please keep coming, please keep the introductions coming and share where you're coming from and what kinds of actions you're planning for April 8th. My name is Levin Kim. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the president of UAW 4121. We are the 8,000 academic workers at the University of Washington. We represent undergrad and graduate student workers, many of whom are impacted by the funding cuts that we're going to be discussing more today, as well as full-time postdoctoral researchers and research scientists and engineers as well. I've been in the United States as an international student or dependent on an international student or on a J-1 visa for the last 15 years or so. And for me, the university and higher education in general has always been a mixture of an employer, a visa sponsor, my landlord at times, and all of those things. All of the attacks that we're seeing on higher ed right now are extensions of how the university has always been these kinds of things for many of us, including international students. And one of the reasons that we want to focus on funding cuts today is looking at all of the international students that are currently workers dependent on and doing and carrying out all of the work of the crucial biomedical research that is sustained by these federal funds. And we want to be fighting to save the future of higher ed as well as healthcare in general as we move our fight forward. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Chenjerai to get us started on the program.
All right. Thank you, Levin. And I got to say, the emergence of labor for higher education is something that has really given me just a sense of just really a sense of excitement, honestly, even in these terrifying, infuriating times, just the sense to see this incredible coalition of labor leaders come together, folks with organizing skills, folks who can turn people out, who can actually build the leverage to win the things we want. So I just want to shout out all of y'all. By the way, for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Chenjerai Kumanyika, and I'm a national at-large council member for AUP National. I'm also a member of AAUP at NYU. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to the president of AAUP, and also vice president of AFT, my colleague and comrade Todd Wolfson, who's going to just kind of like frame the moment for us.
Thanks, Chandra. Hey, y'all. It's great to see you. We have a fantastic call for tonight of folks who are going to outline the fight we're in. But as Chandra said, I'm Todd Wolfson. I'm with AUP and AFT. I'm also part of the mighty Rutgers AUP AFT, which represents faculty, grad workers, postdocs, librarians, staff, some staff, counselors at Rutgers, and I'm a faculty there. And all I want to say, and we want to get into this program, is that what we all know, which is higher ed is coming under a withering assault right now. We're seeing it every day. We're seeing abductions of our students in broad daylight because the federal government doesn't like what they write in their editorials. We're seeing the federal government attempting to control what we research and teach and what our students learn and speak and say and how they shout. We're seeing Trump and his allies attempting to extort universities, saying that they're going to cut biomedical research if those universities don't have rules around and teaching around transgendered students that they like, or they don't police protests around Palestine the way they like. We have these massive attacks on our biomedical research infrastructure, which is what we're here to talk about tonight. But I think we just want to flag that we see these attacks from all these angles, right? And we understand it. And we need to be clear that this is an attempt to take control of higher ed, campus by campus, department by department, president by president. And we're here standing up together to say, no way, we're not going to let that happen. And so it's important to note that April 8th, which is what we're here to talk about, which is Kill the Cuts, is a link on a chain of escalating actions so that we can build our power, get into motion, and fight back and win a higher ed that we all believe in, and also stop the attacks on our sector. And I think, the last thing I just want to say, and then I'm going to kick it to Rafael Jaime, is that we know what the attacks on the biomedical research infrastructure mean. They mean cancer patients left without hope. They mean Alzheimer's going untreated. They mean heart disease taking the lives of our loved ones. And they mean scientists forced to abandon their research that would find the cure for the next disease. It means ripping out students who are learning to become doctors and nurses out of their labs, out of their patient care in front of our eyes. Trump's cuts are reckless, and they will kill, and they are killing. And we're here to say enough. And so we have a great event for you tonight to talk through how we're going to prepare for April 8th. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Rafael Jaime, president of UAW Local 4811 in the University of California, to get into a little more detail on these cuts and then talk a bit about the actions in front of us. Rafa?
Hey, thanks, Saad. Hey, everyone. Rafa, I use he, him pronouns. I come from the English department at UCLA, and I'm also the president of UAW 4811, the union of 48,000 academic workers at the University of California. We're going to talk a little bit more about April 8th, but before we go into that, I just want to talk about why this is so urgent. It's so important that we take action now. We know that over the last 2 months, the Trump administration has been cutting billions of dollars to life-saving research and medical care. And by doing so, the Trump administration is abandoning families who are suffering and costing taxpayers billions of dollars. These reckless cuts are dangerous to our health, and they're also dangerous to our economy. And I wanted to actually share a graph where you can see the impact of these cuts. So this is a graph that's showing the amount of money that has been awarded to universities. So the blue line represents the NIH awards last year, and the other line is the one that represents awards so far this year. Now, this is the same amount of money has been allocated by the Congress as was last year, this year. Same amount of funding compared to last year has been allocated by Congress. However, the Trump administration has not been awarding these grants. And you can see this gap right here. That shows the gap in awards this year compared to last year at the same time. That's a $3 billion gap. So if this trend continues, we're talking about a $30 billion cut to a life-saving research from the NIH. And what this means is, again, $30 billion. So a $30 billion cut. What is the cost of this? So over the last 10 years, the NIH research has resulted in millions of dollars of lives saved, millions of jobs created, and billions of dollars of economic activity. This includes over 1 million lives saved from NIH-driven cancer research, hundreds of new FDA-approved drugs, 400,000 jobs supported each year, and $1 trillion in economic activity. A $30 billion cut this year would mean tens of billions of dollars in lost economic activity, massive job losses, and throwing away promising new drugs and treatments that could save millions of lives in the future. These cuts are happening right now. Every day, grants are not being awarded or renewed. Grants are being canceled. Clinical trials are being shut down. Researchers are being laid off. Promising graduate students are being shown the door. This will set us back years, if not decades. And this is why it's so important that we take action now, on April 8th and beyond that. And so right now I'm going to pass it over to Jacob, who's going to talk about an action happening. The actions are going to be happening all across the country. Ian is going to talk about what that looks like across the country, and Jacob is going to go into more detail about what's happening in Newark, for example. So maybe we'll get start with Ian. Go for it.
Hey everyone, my name is Ian Gavigan. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the national director of an organization called Higher Ed Labor United. Putting the link to our organization in the chat. Many of you in the room are probably familiar with us, but for those who aren't, we're a national labor union coalition of labor union locals. building a wall-to-wall, coast-to-coast movement to transform higher education into the public good that we all know it needs to become. And so in this moment, we have been taking a leading role in bringing together the Labor for Higher Education Coalition at the national level, an unprecedented bringing together of higher unions that organize in the higher education sector. Been really excited to do this in coalition and partnership with AAUP and UAW and others represented on this call. For the 8th of April, first of all, I just want to encourage everyone to check out the website for our day of action, which is we're putting in the chat right now, killthecuts.org. And so I just encourage you to find an action near you. We've got more than 36 actions that are currently listed or in the works, ranging from as far north as Seattle in the west, and as far south as southeast as Florida, all up and down California. We'll be in Chicago, Detroit, Worcester, Ohio, State College, PA, Philadelphia, Boston, and small college towns and big cities alike. And people will be hosting a wide range of actions to confront power holders in their community, to confront their elected representatives, to hold their administrations accountable on their campuses, to call for an end to these cuts, to call for full funding of our research infrastructure, to call for an end to the political interference that we're seeing from the federal administration and from state administrations, and to stand up for the many tens and hundreds of thousands of jobs in this sector that are on the line at this moment, and the communities that will impact. So again, just encouraging everyone to go to our website, killthecuts.org, find an action near you, RSVP there. If you RSVP, we'll get in touch with you to make sure you're keyed into the action near you. And if you're not already involved in an action near you, or if there isn't one available to you, we can work with you to get one going. We have a week to do this, which I promise you is more than enough time. And so please take some inspiration from Rafa, from Jacob, from others you're going to hear on this call. And if we don't yet have an action plan near you, let's do it. We're building out through this process. This isn't just one day of action. We're building the local coordinating capacity, the local structures, so that we can so that we can keep fighting, so that we can escalate, so that we can take on what's next. This is so critically important. So April 8th is an opening. It's not the end, it's the beginning of something national and also grounded in our community. So thank you so much. Check out the Kill the Cuts website, sign up, and I'm going to pass it off to, I think Jacob is next.
Great. Thanks so much, Ian. Yeah. So, for people who don't know, Rutgers spans across the state of New Jersey, right? There's a Newark campus, there's 5 campuses in New Brunswick and Piscataway, and then there's another campus down in Camden. For this action, we're focusing on Rutgers Newark, and we're using this as an opportunity to build across with multiple unions that I don't think typically interact with each other, right? They might come together for some things, but not really in the same kind of way, because the cuts are so widespread. So we've been reaching out to CWA in Essex County and Newark, SEIU, the Newark Teachers Union, which is their K-12 AFT Federation. But at Rutgers, it's also including, the medical faculty, the admin assistant union, which is also AFT, and obviously the Rutgers grads, faculty, postdocs. And really seeing this an opportunity to kind of start to bring labor together in Essex County in a kind of unique sort of way. A couple ways we're doing that is, President Randi Weingarten is coming in and being able to speak and kind of bring in a crowd that might not come out otherwise, especially like building those connections with the K-12 unions. And the other big speaker initially is just Mayor Ras Baraka, who has been supportive of more progressive kind of campaigns, and also to help kind of bring in and solidify the community effort and getting us really deeper into what's happening, right? In addition to the federal cuts, we're also facing state cuts in New Jersey, right? And we need to be able to not only push back on the federal aspect, but then also on the state to make sure that the politicians in power here are not enacting Trump's budgets in a different kind of way, right? And just a couple of things that we're doing, I think, a little bit uniquely right now to help drive out some turnout. Right now, we have what's called Faculty Speak Week, which is faculty, adjuncts, faculty, grads, talking directly to their classrooms about the issues that affect people the most, and encouraging these kind of political conversations happening in their classrooms and talking about their working conditions, their research, and why it matters, right? Kind of breaking down the divide between students and the teachers in the front of the room, right? The other thing is we're reaching out, we're going classroom to classroom for the classes that are right before the rally. So that way professors can talk to their students about why it matters. And then, our rally is going to start at 4. The class period ends at 3:50. So they're able to either end class a little bit early or go the entire time, but then ask their students to actually join them, because this is a fight that's going to affect all of us. And you really use it as a mobilization skill, right? Or mobilization tactic. The last thing I'll just want to throw out here is AUP National has been doing Skills to Win programs. Going through the bread and butter organizing methods. And what we've noticed is that the members who are stepping up and getting most involved, who are having these hard organizing conversations, who are willing to talk to their students and are willing to talk to their coworkers and get them out, are ones who have participated in Skills to Win. And they feel more comfortable doing so. And that's why, the importance of bringing in those organizing skills so that we can have those conversations ahead of time and mobilize our membership when it matters, when there is something so crucial, so immediate, and so what often feels very spontaneous, isn't if we are deeply organized, trained as organizers, and then able to use that power when it matters in a crisis moment, kind of like this. So, really targeting the buildings and how do we use the workplace as an organizing ground, but then also making sure our members are prepared and ready to do the organizing, so that way when they need to mobilize, it's much easier. And those are just kind of some of the things that we're kind of working through here at Rutgers Newark, and we're very excited for April 8th.
Thanks so much, Jacob. Thank you, Jacob. And I'll just underline 2 things that are really critical there, and then we're going to go to our next speaker, which is, one, obviously the only way we're going to win is organizing on our campuses and building power on our campuses. That's key to what we're doing now. And then 2 is the coalitions we need to build to win in the long term. Look, let's be honest about this. Higher ed alone is not going to fight back and beat back fascism that's rising up against us. We need to build alliances with other sectors. And in New Jersey, we're trying to figure out what it looks like to build a strong alliance with K-12 teachers and with others in the sector alongside every higher ed worker. And so that's one thing that as this fight develops, we're going to have to think about what are the other sectors in motion that are ready to fight with us as we increase our militancy. And with that, I think we're actually going to go to another Rutgers speaker. We're so lucky to have Professor Annika Barber. She's a professor of molecular biology and biochemistry here. Annika, I'm passing it to you.
All right, thanks so much. So I am Annika Barber. I use she, her pronouns, and I want to encourage you that you absolutely can sign up a week ahead to run a rally. I was the New Jersey organizer for the Stand Up for Science rally, and I got 500 people to Trenton in 11 days. So you can definitely do it. I am a scientist, not an organizer. I'm good at taking brains out of bugs, not calling people. I'm a millennial, and I made actual phone calls. So I fell in love with science when I was in elementary school. And in 2020, I got my dream job as a real scientist professor here at Rutgers. And just last year, I got my first big National Institutes of Health grant to fund my lab's research. The National Institutes of Health is the single largest public funder of biomedical research in the world. And you might read headlines that say that other countries see the defunding of the NIH as an opportunity to recruit US scientists, or you might hear scientists saying they wish they could get hired in another country. But NIH funds more than all of the governmental scientific funding agencies in Europe and Canada combined. NIH levels of scientific research funding simply don't exist anywhere else on Earth. This funding is the driver of healthcare progress for everyone on this planet. 99% of FDA-approved drugs rely on NIH-funded research, from basic work in animals and cell models to clinical trials. And we need a government that continues to invest in scientific research, not tax cuts for billionaires. I want to talk about my work specifically. I am a scientist and I am funded by the NIH. My lab works on traumatic brain injury in fruit flies. And while science has made tremendous progress in improving survival from traumatic brain injury, those survivors experience many, many problems, from migraines to sleep disorders to seizures and neurodegeneration. And brain injury survivors are not just people in high-risk professions like our veterans. More than half of American brain injury patients are people over 55 falling at home. And we have decades of work in rodents and in clinical models that have tried to find therapeutics that have all failed in clinical trials. So my NIH-funded research is going back to really basic molecular work and conducting large-scale screens of genes in fruit flies in different kinds of cells to find new potential therapeutic targets that will address quality of life for brain injury survivors. And these new therapeutics are probably 20 years away. I'm not funding research that's going to turn into a cure tomorrow. But my research is filling a pipeline of knowledge that is critical to continuing to make biomedical breakthroughs. And if my lab isn't filling that pipeline now, we have nothing to draw from in 10 years or in 20 years. Without work that's currently being done in bacteria and worms and flies and squid and even Gila monsters, which is where we got Ozempic, we would not have modern medical treatments for cancer or diabetes or chronic pain. For each pharma or biotech company that's announcing a new treatment or a drug, there are decades of foundational, federally funded science that allowed that treatment to come about. And those same pharma and biotech companies are hiring the undergraduate and graduate students that are trained in NIH-funded labs. Many of the cuts at NIH are to training grants, which are the lifeblood of innovation, not only in academia, but across the entire US economy. Trump and the GOP's attack on basic science is cutting off an incredible pipeline of knowledge and talent that is unique in the entire world and is critical to having the medical breakthroughs that we have gotten comfortable with gaining year on year. So without killing these cuts, we are cutting ourselves off at the knee, and we are making America sicker and sicker as we fail to fund research and fund training that we need.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Just making sure you're done, Annika, because all right. Thank you so much for, and listen, folks, this is part of what the task of what we have to do is. We have to educate people about what these cuts really cost and what they really do, how these cuts are killing people, who they're affecting. Earlier, Levin was talking about the fact that so many postdocs are international folks. And so when you're fighting to kill these cuts, you're actually fighting for immigration, right? These things are linked. They're real issues that link our struggles. Right now, I'm so excited to introduce our first speaker. We are going to hear from Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who's now serving her 5th term in Congress representing Washington's 7th District. She unfortunately had to take a flight, so she was kind enough to send us this video. She's going to talk about how we can fight. But I just want to say, Congresswoman Jayapal is a member of the House Judiciary Committee, where she serves as ranking member of the subcommittee on Immigration, Integrity, Security, and Enforcement. She's a chair emerita of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I mean, she's in such an interesting and strategic location, and she's going to talk to us about how we can fight and how important this fight around medical research is. So let's have this video.
Hey UAW, it is great to be with you today as we come together and organize and mobilize around next week's Kill the Cuts Day of Action. Just last week, I was in my district at an oncology lab at Fred Hutch Cancer Center, one of only 11 National Cancer Institute designated cancer centers in the United States, where indirect cuts could result in an immediate annual shortfall of $125 million. That has meant that fellows and researchers can't be offered positions in the lab, that life-saving projects are on hold, and that research grants have been scoured for being slashed for words just like women and non-binary and COVID. The NIH cuts will literally mean people will die, that America will no longer be at the cutting edge of scientific research, that our labs will crumble and fall, and that people from around the world will not come here. Every day I am hearing stories of talented people who are now choosing not to come to America because of the crackdowns on free speech and on funding. And every day I hear more stories from researchers, doctors, scientists whose life-saving and life-changing work is being stopped in its tracks, groundbreaking research that has been lost. These cuts are hitting everywhere. The effort to eliminate the Department of Education will devastate all education, including higher ed, and it will devastate not only our big cities like Seattle, Boston, and New York, but also our small towns whose economies depend on these places. There are nearly 500 regional public universities across the United States in almost every state, and many rooted in rural areas and communities that face high unemployment, childhood poverty, and limited access to medical care. All of our universities play a critical role in lifting up struggling individuals and entire communities that could easily die without them. This is all the playbook of dictators and authoritarians. Crush dissent, slash funding for programs that give economic and intellectual power to the people, destroy any organized power base like organized labor, stop collective bargaining and the right to organize against greedy corporations and CEOs. And why? All to pass a $4.5 trillion tax cut for billionaires and give them even more money to buy their power and buy our elections. Well, we've got news for them. We are not folding. Our organized power will eclipse their cruelty and greed. Our resistance will counter their hate. We don't have kings and dictators in America, and we will not let Trump and Musk destroy our democracy, destroy our unions, destroy our education, destroy our people. What all of the research into democratic backsliding around the world shows us is that it is not government or institutions that save us from democracies falling into dictatorship. It is the people. It is you. And so your work to build the resistance of people to what is happening, our collective work to target the economic supports of Trump and Musk, our work to defend the most vulnerable amongst us and refuse to collapse to fear and silence, that is the work that will win us back our freedom. And nowhere is that more clear than right here with the powerful, united UAW. So thank you all for being here today to stand up and show a powerful display of courage and resistance. Let's work together and let's kill the cuts. Thank you all.
Thank you, Congresswoman Jayapal. It was so great to hear that message and so instructive. And I just want to take a minute to shout all of you out who are in this call. I know you all are doing the work on your campuses. I see so many of you from so many different AUPs, from different locals, from different orgs, different kinds of research. And I just want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's hard to do this work, but this kind of work, talking to your colleagues, having these conversations, taking the Skills for Power workshop, these are the kind of things that actually allow us to become strong. And speaking of doing the work, I'm about to introduce our next featured speaker, just like an incredible colleague and friend and comrade, Naomi Klein, someone who is I've been learning from for a long time. So many of us have seen her on the front lines of so many different fights. And I got to say also, in addition to just framing issues for us, helping us to think bigger, helping us to reorient, Naomi's also a colleague in higher ed. She in the Department of Geography at the University of British Columbia and co-director of the Center for Climate Justice. So I'm so glad that Naomi was able to take a few minutes to talk with us here and just let us know about a few things, that we should be thinking about in this moment. Welcome, comrade.
Thank you, Chenjerai. It's great to be with you. I've got my Rutgers mug because that's where we met. I used to be at Rutgers. I still have an honorary position there, and that's where I got to see the power of this kind of organizing in higher ed, particularly during COVID, and what it really meant to organize across the silos that keep us apart, and doing the work of public education about why this matters, right? Because part of what we're up against is a perception that isn't always wrong, that higher ed has become too cut off. And this is the sort of the consequences of earlier battles that we might not have won, that have allowed tuitions to get too high, and that have allowed these institutions to cease to serve the purposes that they should have served, and in being accessible to everyone and being a home for every kid's dream that wants to go. So there's a lot of work to do. As Chandra said, I've been researching this move. Did you just lose me, or did I just lose you? No, I'm still here. I've been researching this move that, back in, back in 2007, when I first published the shock doctrine, that I've been describing as the shock doctrine maneuver, right? That a state of crisis, disorientation is harnessed to push through a pre-existing agenda that serves elites, right? It has happened over and over again. We saw people try to do it during COVID. There was a lot of pushback. But the game is always pretty much the same, push privatization, deregulation, austerity, tax cuts, the wish list. So I think we're seeing a lot of that in this moment. But I think it's also different, and it's useful to understand what is different about this moment and this particular group of maniacs at the helm of the US government. Even though they are in this long lineage of people who have privatized and clawed back and attacked the public good during times of crisis, this has happened so many times and over so many decades that now there's nothing really much left to cut except for the beating heart. And this is what we're seeing in the attacks on the federal government, in the attacks on higher ed, in the attacks on the post office, in the attacks on federal buildings. It's the same game, but with more consequential results. And there's a kind of a mania to it because, of course, the people who are doing the cuts, also have to breathe air and drink water, and try not to get infectious diseases. So there's a way in which I think the ideology of our elites has really become a kind of secessionist movement, where they really believe that they don't actually have to live in this world, that their wealth, and this is why it matters that they accumulate more and more and more, because they're actually building bunkers, they're building rocket ships. I mean, a lot of it is fantasy, but it's a fantasy that I think people like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, actually believe. And we can't be in denial about that. We also can't be in denial about the fact that these cuts to your vital research are part of a much broader war on objective reality. They don't want people to know things. That is how you end up with a President Trump. That's how you end up with an RFK Jr., in charge of public health. It is what they want. It's what they want because they are in competition with many of the things that these public institutions that they're dismantling are doing. And that's, everything from wanting to run their own grifty private universities to, and this is where I think this is really new territory. This, we've called it a corporate coup or a billionaire's coup, but we have to be specific that this really is a Silicon Valley coup. And Silicon Valley is absolutely enamored, obsessed with their new bubble, which is the only thing that is providing mega profits at this moment, and that is AI. So what that means is that they are not just trying to sell off the university for parts. It means that they are pushing for a kind of robotification, replacing of humans with machines on an absolutely epic scale. Now, we know as educators that this is going to be, an AI education is a bad education, but, I think they don't care about that because it doesn't have to be good, as we've seen from many of the AI products. It just has to be profitable. this push to replace faculty, instructors, all kinds of work with, videos and so on, to get control over our intellectual output as faculty has been, honestly, something that we have been fighting since I was an undergrad, which is a very, very long time ago. But I think what AI means is that they really believe that this time they can pull it off. So I think we are in this kind of end times moment where we've got a lot of very powerful people who are, have become convinced that this is a moment where they're going to be able to just withdraw into an entirely privatized world. I mean, there's a little detail that Trump announced that he's going to unveil 10 freedom cities. This means entirely privatized corporate cities. Some of this sounds so out there that we can barely pay attention to it, but I think that we really do need to understand that this is a more radical project. I've been studying the Heritage Foundation for a long time. I know what they tried to do after Hurricane Katrina. It was the usual playbook of privatization and deregulation, pushing fossil fuel projects. But now this Heritage Foundation and Project 2025, precisely because they're cutting so deeply to the heart of these essential services that are so important to everyday people, all they have to offer is also the politics of dominance, right? Because this is actually so obviously going to make so many people's lives miserable. The only thing they have to offer is you get to be on the top of the pile of wreckage. You get to enjoy watching the people who made you feel lesser, made you feel a little stupid or lesser. You get to own the libs. You get to make sure that as a white person or as a man or as a cis person, you are that little bit better off than other people. So it's really an agenda, I think, that foregrounds sadism in a way that we haven't seen before, precisely because it is so damaging. So, it's a scary project, but the reason why I think we shouldn't look away from it is because when we really understand the sort of depths of depravity that we're up against, I think this is a tremendous organizing opportunity. I mean, when this agenda is really unveiled, it shocks people. And it's an opportunity, I think, to build an incredibly broad coalition. And that's the work that you're going to be doing on April 8th. And you all know that it's just the beginning, that the front lines are now everywhere. They're attacking everybody all at once. And on the one hand, that is incredibly disorienting and difficult because we don't know where to look and we're constantly feeling like we're not doing the right thing. On the other hand, if we are part of a genuinely organized movement, it means they've built our coalition for us, and it is extremely broad. It's the broadest coalition of any of our lifetimes that is within our reach right now. So I'm just going to leave it with that. And thanks for inviting me.
Thanks so much, Naomi. I remember when Naomi was with us. Naomi was in my department at Rutgers. My heart has broken losing her to UBC, but always spitting fire and being such a leader of our union. Thank you, Naomi. And from one person I learned so much from to another. I've learned so much from. Our next speaker, somebody I've had the pleasure of organizing with for, I don't know, over a decade. Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis. She is the executive director of Cairo Center for Religions, Rights, and Social Justice, and she's co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. Liz, welcome.
Thank you so much, Todd, and thanks to everyone for being here and mostly for the organizing work that you're doing. It's really an honor to be in this group of thinkers and fighters, professors, teachers, adjuncts, public intellectuals, scholars, organizers, workers, parents, students. I mean, what a powerful group of people standing up, fighting back, holding firm, and uniting to indeed kill these cuts. So I am adjunct faculty myself. I'm a parent of kids in schools under attack. I'm the child and sibling of higher education workers. And it's so heartening to be here, to read all the names in the chat, to hear about all the actions people are standing up and organizing on this call. I have been a longtime organizer. I've been organizing, doing very grassroots organizing for decades upon decades. And I know firsthand, and I know folks here do, that power indeed, as Frederick Douglass reminds us, concedes nothing without a fight. It concedes nothing without a demand, without a force and a power that the group of people here gathered this evening and the thousands and thousands and thousands of others in our campuses and in our communities are building. I just want to kind of share this evening that you are not alone in this fight. Faith leaders and poor folk and doctors and lawyers and social workers and advocates and organizers and activists and low-wage workers and so many others are in this fight with you and will show up to kill the cuts and show up in the streets and on our campuses as we have to kind of rise up in this moment. Folks might be aware that this Friday is the anniversary of the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King was killed standing up and organizing with sanitation workers in Memphis as he was building a Poor People's Campaign. And when he was doing this work and calling others into this kind of resistance, into this nonviolent action, he said something that is perhaps my favorite quote of his of all time. I think it's something we can learn from today. He said, "There's nothing wrong with a traffic law which says that you have to stop for a red light. But when a fire is raging, the fire truck goes right through that red light, and normal traffic had better get out of its way. Or when a man is bleeding to death, the ambulance goes through those red lights at top speed." Well, there is a fire raging now in this society. We need brigades of ambulance drivers who will have to ignore the red lights of the present system until the emergency is solved. This evening, I want to appreciate everyone here on this call and the folks that you're organizing with on your campuses across the country for signing up to be ambulance drivers in this moment. Signing up to organize and mobilize in your campus and community to kill the cuts and to hold up actions next week on Tuesday, April 8th. I want to thank you for signing up and being willing to ignore the red lights of authoritarianism and oligarchy and transphobia and billionaire bubbles and the militarization of our communities and our campuses and attacks on science and attacks on education and attacks on freedom of speech, and to keep that up until the emergency is solved. I know we can do this. That change happens when people stand up and sign up to be that kind of nonviolent resistors, to be organizers and educators who say, it doesn't have to be this way. This is not as good as it gets. And we have the power to make our campuses, make our communities, make the society actually stand up for the values that we all espouse. And so we say in the Poor People's Campaign, we're going to move forward together and not one step back. And so indeed, we will see you in the streets and on campuses next week, and we will move forward together and not one step back.
Thank you, Reverend. I'm really honored to introduce our next speaker, who is a fellow UAW member and organizer that I've been learning a lot from, and honored to be in the fight alongside. So I'm going to introduce Matt Brown, who is on the executive board of UAW Local 2750, representing the research workers at the National Institutes of Health. And Matt also studies how sensory systems translate the world around us into electrical signals that the brain can understand, which sounds like really important research. Matt, over to you.
Yes, Levin, thanks so much for the introduction. As Levin said, my name is Matt Brown, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow in the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development at the NIH. I'm also the recording secretary of our union, NIH Fellows United. We're a local of UAW 2750. We represent approximately 5,000 early career researchers here at the NIH, and mostly in Bethesda, but in NIH campuses across the country. And really, we're sitting at the intersection of two groups that the Trump administration is currently trying to disorient and destroy: federal workers and academic researchers. As federal workers, our unit is facing an uncertain future every day with threats of termination. Even just today, we had 13 world-leading experts at the National Institutes of Neurological Diseases and Stroke that were terminated coldly and unexpectedly. And the folks working in their lab are currently not sure what the next few days, weeks, or months are going to look like. The cuts to extramural funding that have already been highlighted today are putting our futures as researchers and healthcare providers on the line. The folks in our union are going to end up being the people that are leading labs and sitting at the bedside for folks in the future. And if the NIH funding doesn't exist to promote that future, then it won't be there. But we're really turning this uncertainty into motivation within our unit by making sure that each and every single person understands the gravity of the moment. The problem in front of us really is existential. Do we want a future that includes our life-saving research or not? And we need to snatch the opportunity that's in front of us to protect federal funding for life-saving research long into the future. This isn't just about what the research environment looks like in a week. It's about what it looks like in a year and 10 years. And so to do this, we're turning that motivation into two labor basics: one-to-one organizing and solidarity. We've really been doubling down on empowering our individual workers to organize the folks around them on campus. And at the same time, we've been reaching out to organize researchers from across the DC area. And this includes researchers from other UAW locals, but also locals from UE and SEIU across 4 different institutions. We're really excited to be working with all of these folks, and we think this broad coalition that we're all building here on this call is really what's going to protect not only our future careers in research, but protect American lives.
Thanks so much, Matt. Thanks for your leadership and the leadership of NIH Fellows United. We're all inspired by the organizing that's happening there. Next up, we have an amazing speaker who has a lot to share about the importance of NIH in everyday life, Lauren Kerner. Lauren.
Thank you, Todd.
Welcome.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you sincerely for letting me share this powerful space with you. My name is Lauren Kerner. I'm a graduate of UC Irvine and Oxford University. I've been a union member, an organizer, and most recently served in the Biden-Harris administration. But I'm not here today as a policy person. I am here as a big sister. My little brother Daniel was the youngest of us Kerner siblings. And like many youngest siblings, he was the favorite. He had this belly laugh that made you smile even when you didn't want to, and a bear hug that could undo any trouble he got into. He loved Buzz Lightyear, fire trucks, and Carl's Jr. chicken stars. He was the perfect little brother. When Daniel was just 4 years old, he started losing the ability to speak. It was as if a vacuum had come and taken away his vocabulary. He started having seizures. One day, when Daniel got home from summer school, although he was able to walk onto the bus in the morning, he had to crawl. After months of confusion and misdiagnoses, my family learned that he had Batten disease, a rare and always fatal neurological disorder. My parents were told that most children don't live past age 12. There's this thing that families say to doctors when they're scared. They say, "Doctor, please, is there anything you can do?" For so many families in America, that anything that offers the only shred of hope comes from federally funded medical research through the NIH. For our family, that was the case. Because of federally funded research, Daniel was accepted into the world's first clinical trial using neural stem cells to try to slow the progression of Batten disease. On November 14th, 2006, he became the first person in the world to undergo this surgery in an FDA phase 1 clinical trial. It was terrifying, it was groundbreaking, and it would not have been possible without the full force of the NIH and the FDA behind it. Daniel survived the surgery. He woke up laughing. That trial proved that the method was safe. It didn't save Daniel's life. He passed away when he was 10. But it gives us hope. And it paved the way for the possibility of a cure for future children. Day by day, more hope is found through cures made possible by the NIH and federally funded medical research. In 2017, the FDA approved an enzyme replacement therapy from BioMarin, the first treatment to delay the progression of CLN2 Batten disease. BioMarin would not have been able to find this next door offering hope for a cure without the NIH. Right now, the NIH, the largest public funder of biomedical research in the world, is paralyzed. Grants are frozen, critical research is stalled, and we fear that the Trump administration may gut these agencies like we are seeing all across the federal government. This isn't about red or blue. This is about people. This is about our families. It's about our children. It's about the next Daniel and the next family begging for a chance to fight. So today we join together and say that the American people do not want to see our publicly funded medical research sinking into the dark. Now more than ever, at the cusp of another technological revolution, we should be pouring our resources into more cures and healthier lives. We know that if this administration were serious about making America healthy, they would not kill these agencies. They would not only maintain their funding, but increase it. So in honor of Daniel, thank you so much for letting me share my story with you all. And thank you so much for the organizing and the fight that we're all in together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. You know, it just really rips, I think, all of our hearts apart to hear this. But it's important for us to hear it because when we say these cuts kill, this is not hyperbole. We're talking about the sort of medical infrastructure of this country that affects so many people, and it's real. And so you don't, like, you know, as Lauren said so well, you don't have to. It's okay to have, you know, critiques or think critically about higher education. Those of us in here in higher education, we're thinking critically about it. But this is real simple. Do you want RFK or, you know, somebody on the internet doing your medical research based on wild conspiracy theories, or do you want the NIH, which has developed all the life-saving therapies, doing that research? So thank you, Lauren. I really appreciate you just bringing that home for us. Next up, we're going to hear from someone I'm really excited to hear about from. Jessica Tang is president of Massachusetts Federation of Teachers, a chair of AFT's Resistance Committee, and she's just someone who's making really powerful linkages between the pre-K, K through 12, and higher ed workers. And, you know, we talked about the importance of these coalition building, right? Naomi talked about that. Todd talked about it. We're building coalitions. We're becoming more and more, so many that we can't be denied and can't be ignored. And so I'm really excited to have Jessica here. Jessica, share some words with us, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here, you know, and speak with you all because as many speakers have shared, this fight is not just a fight in education or higher education. It's also a fight in pre-K, actually 12 through higher education, but also with our federal workers and all of the different departments. So for example, you know, on Friday, the Secretary of Education canceled grants that already currently are active from the American Rescue Plan. And in Massachusetts, that's a loss of over $100 million, of active grants that are already currently in use that are impacting students today. And you all are probably familiar with that because that's what already has been happening in higher ed. And so in a lot of the ways, what higher ed is facing is like the canary in the coal mine, whether it is, freedom of speech, whether if it's being able to have DEI programs, whether it's the canceling of grants like from the NIH, it's not actually just the Department of Education, that's also impacting pre-K through higher ed or pre-K through 12. It was grants from USDA that enabled schools to buy food from local farms to be able to create fresh meals for our families. It was also from the EPA grants that have been cut too, that were helping to fund electric school buses, for example, here in Boston. But all of our fights are connected. And in fact, right now I'm outside because I'm at a rally right now with SEIU, and I can show you real quick. Well, actually, maybe I can't show you. I can't show you. family background, but I'm next to hundreds of people right now who are out in support of Rumeysa Ozturk, who is an SEIU 509 grad student who was literally abducted in plain daylight in Somerville, Massachusetts, for what? Detained by ICE because she wrote an op-ed in support of Palestine. And, you know, it's not just about what she was fighting for. It's the fact that there was a court here that said you cannot take her outside of Massachusetts. And even so, she was detained and brought to Louisiana. And that should alarm everyone because, again, what's happening on higher ed campuses is not happening in isolation. All of these things that are happening are actually connected to the erosion of democracy right now. And so now more than ever, we have to help connect the dots, not just between pre-K and higher ed, but also what's happening to our federal workers, the cancellation of their contracts, the erosion of freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the erosion of the rule of law. All of these things are connected right now. And again, more than ever, we need to stand in solidarity together. And that's why I'm here with you all tonight, but also here at this rally in support of the SEIU 509 worker, because again, all of our fights are connected. And so what we need is mass mobilization. We need 4-8 to be, you know, again, a massive action that is drawing attention to what's happening both in higher ed, but also drawing connections between how that is happening in coordination with all the other ways that the current authoritarian regime is trying to erode democracy. So again, part of democracy is the right to public goods and knowledge itself. And it is not a coincidence that higher ed and free speech, free press are all being attacked all at once, and labor itself. And so stand with you in solidarity as part of the AFT Resistance Committee. And we will continue to work with you all because we have to. This is the time that we all need to be working together. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you for your leadership in this fight. You've been in this fight for so long. Thank you for your words and your guidance. And you're absolutely right. To help with it's what we got to understand. This is not just about higher ed. This is, I loved, you know, how you said it's like the canary in the coal mine, right? This is, and it also is affecting, you know, K through 12, pre-K. I have a daughter in kindergarten, so it's real. Listen, folks, I know it's 7 p.m. We're going to get this wrapped up in 10 minutes. I'm just going to ask you to stay for 10 more minutes because we have some crucial information we want you to know about things that are coming up. So, and I got to say, you know, on February 20th, when we came out, it was powerful. I saw so many people speaking, sharing the impacts of this, really telling the real story. And we're going to do that even more so on April 8th. And one of the groups that we want to draw in with us are people who are federal workers who are also part of this coalition. And so we're going to now hear from Paul Osadebe. He's a leader of the Federal Unionist Network. You know, I mean, I think you've seen what's going on right now, right? Y'all saw what's coming down in the last, just this week, we've seen this attempt to union bust 700,000 federal workers, right? So, you know, we all want to stand as federal workers together. Paul, you know, say a few words for us about what this fight means to you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here and to be in solidarity with so many amazing people who are here and ready and know that what we need right now is mass togetherness. That's the only way out of this right now. And that's what we're trying to create with the Federal Unionist Network. We are trying to organize people throughout the federal government, across agencies, unions, regions, all the usual stuff that typically divides federal workers. This is not the time for any of that. We have to come together. And because we have that potential power, because there's 2.3 million of us, and we are committed to public service every single day, providing free public goods for people that improve lives, that save lives, that make people able to live with dignity and to not be entirely dependent on the market and billionaires. That is exactly why we are under attack, because they want to cut the foundations from everyone so that everyone is entirely dependent on the few and the people with the most resources and the people who feel that they have the right to control our lives. And that's why they don't want people like me who do civil rights work. That's why they don't want researchers. And that's why they don't want higher education. Because the thing that we all have in common is that we prove through our work that there's other ways of being useful to society, to providing benefit to people. It's not all profit that drives everything. And that is an idea that they cannot allow to exist out in the world because they want everything in a way that they can control it and that they can decide who gets what. And all of that is at their whim. And they don't want any alternative to that. And that's exactly what higher education provides. Through the research that people in higher education do, you imagine a better world for people when it comes to their health. In terms of just like the basic ideas that people can even think of, you are the ones who are blazing that path for people, and they don't want that at all. They want the exact same, just broken ideas and structures that we've had for hundreds of years to be what controls everything and to not have any concept of an alternative to that. That's why they don't want free speech on campuses, because when young people can get together, and just people of any age can get together and really think about what they want society to be from scratch and to critically look at society, those people don't tend to vote Republican. So that's why that has to be swept away in their minds. And what we have to do is all the people who do that kind of work have to realize our power, even if we don't traditionally look at ourselves in that way or think of ourselves as activists, people who just kind of try to focus on the science or focus on the research or focus on just providing your services day to day. That's not enough anymore, because what we need now is for people to understand themselves as public servants. And because you're a public servant, that calls on you to action right now, because the very concept of public service and public goods is under attack. And the only way to fight that is through mass organizing, one-on-one, group to group, community to community, and profession to profession, sector to sector. And I think if we do that, if we take this opportunity, as people say that like a bad boss is the best organizer, I think we're seeing that. This call wouldn't have happened under different circumstances, but it's happening now, and we can make them wish that it never had, that they hadn't messed with us to the point that we just had to really get to it. And that's exactly what we need to do. I mean, today, April 8th, May Day, May 3rd, just going forward, it's time to get active and organized.
Thank you so much, Paul. I love that mass togetherness. That's awesome. And I just want to underline something Chenjerai said, which is we are all federal workers now. We are all. That attack on federal workers is an attack on all of us. One other thing I want to underline, I'm going to pass it to Rafa and Levin to close us out, is this. Federal workers, pre-K-12 workers, the Poor People's Campaign, all higher ed workers, our students, the communities we serve, that's a formation that can win, right? And there's more we need. We need our healthcare workers, we need our ports, we need our industrial sector, but we can win. This is the formation that can win and transform this country, and that's what we're building. And as we move towards more militancy, we're going to have to do it with other sectors, and that's why we're building with FUN, we're building with pre-K-12, we're building with the Poor People's Campaign, and we're going to keep building our power. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to Rafa and Levin to sort of explain next steps and close us out. Rafa, Levin, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Todd. I can kick us off, and then Rafa, I'll pass it to you. Like I said at the beginning, my name is Levin. I'm an international student, currently here on an F1 visa. This is nearly half of our workforce at 4121, where nearly half of our postdocs and a third of academic student employees are international students. Right now, as you've seen and heard on this call, Trump 2.0 is intensifying attacks on immigrants, on workers, on higher ed as a sector, And the very idea of the public good, as Paul was just talking about, via higher education with the more sophisticated energy or strategy to terrify and immobilize us. Trump is rolling out like the standard tactics like travel bans or increased digital surveillance, all those things. But the federal administration is also holding research funding hostage in many cases to bully universities into doing the administration's dirty work and advancing a fascist political agenda, whether it's abducting immigrants and or international students, withholding funding from crucial medical research that will have impacts on generations to come, and everything else that he's trying to do. So as Trump is turning our campuses and our workplaces into the battlefronts or the battlegrounds of his advancing his fascist agenda, we have a responsibility to meet this moment by pulling off massive actions, by mobilizing our coworkers into escalating actions, and to stand up and fight back. Like we mentioned throughout this call, the 4-8 action is going to be one of many actions and many strategies that we take over the next couple of months, the rest of these 3 years, to not only fight for and defend what we currently have, but also to make advancements and to win more research funding, things like that, like we have done during the first Trump presidency to be able to expand the research funding that we got. To that, I'm going to pass it over to Rafa. I'm going to drop the URL to the website for Kill the Cuts one more time in the chat so that folks can RSVP for the action near you or get in touch to organize your own action. Rafa, take it away so we can close this out.
Thanks, Levin. Yes, everyone, it's super important that everyone participate in the Kill the Cuts action on April 8th, but it's also important to remember that we cannot treat this as a one-off action. We need to continue to put pressure on decision makers, on electeds, to continue to fund NIH research, to continue to fund our federal services that make this country run. We cannot just stop on April 8th. There are many other battles that are going to keep coming up. One that's coming up is the continuing resolution. So in the fall, Congress is going to be deciding on what the budget is going to look like for federal services. That's going to be another really important moment for us to continue fighting and ensure that we can continue to fund these essential public services, including NIH research. After April 8th, there's going to be a sign-on letter by members of Congress to ensure that we can continue to fund public research. And we're going to be, it's going to be important that we continue to pressure electeds to sign on to this letter, make a commitment to fund this important research. And we continue to organize, bring more workers together to continue to push for this agenda. So again, important to remember April 8th, but then we're going to continue to organize after that. I'll pass it back over to you, to Todd.
And one last thing, just adding on to what Rafa was saying at the end, as we're building this sectoral strategy together, I just wanted to also make sure that folks had the website to Hired Labor United. So I'm going to drop that URL in the chat, and would be great to use that space to continue building out our coordinated sectoral strategy around this.
Thank you folks for coming. We'll see you at 4-8 on your campus and in the streets. And as Rafa said, this is one link on a chain. We got to build our militancy and we got to prepare, and that's what we're doing. And this is one step in that direction. And let's keep on going. Thank you all for coming out. Thanks for all of our amazing speakers. And let's keep fighting. Let's keep organizing. Let's keep talking to our colleagues, our students, and we're going to win. We are going to win. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. The webinar's ended. Bye.